Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here at the Cannes Film Festival, and it's time to review Elvis. This is obviously the Elvis biopic directed by Baz Luhrmann. It's basically a Wikipedia page biopic that follows Elvis's entire career, told through the perspective of his weird manager, played by Tom Hanks in a fat suit. Now, I think we're all experiencing a little bit of musical biopic fatigue because ever since the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, studios have been cranking these things out, and not all of them are great. And Elvis is yet another pretty generic musical biopic. In terms of the story, it suffers from zooming through his life at breakneck speed, but I guess at least Baz Luhrmann is the one doing the zooming. I have mixed feelings on how well Baz Luhrmann's style actually works for this story. On one hand, the movie is really energetic, colorful, and hard not to be entertained by. Baz Luhrmann's work is very musical even when he's not directing a musical, and I did appreciate the way that the music was handled here. From the touches of modern soundtrack to the ways that it punches up Elvis's music so that it sounds a little more modern. One of the major points this movie tries to hit on is Elvis's love for the crowd and for performing and the excess of all of that. And Baz Luhrmann's style does capture that well. The best scenes in the movie are the ones where we get to watch Elvis passionately performing, thriving on stage, being true to who he is. And it works much better when Elvis has a motivation when he goes on stage, when he's like setting out to prove who he is as an artist, rather than when the movie's just showing him perform to show us that he is a talented guy. The editing in this movie is insane. There's a lot of wacky shit, a lot of split screen stuff going on, transitions where like a Ferris wheel will turn into like a casino roulette and then Elvis's face will be like in the middle. And while everyone likes to criticize Bohemian Rhapsody for the over editing, it does feel a little bit more deliberately in service of a style here because Baz is an unashamed maximalist. What I don't so much like in this movie is the generic storytelling and the bullet points approach to telling Elvis's story, because we breeze through this band's life very quickly, and moving quickly allows Baz Luhrmann to do all this like crazy editing, transition, narration shit. But the effect by the end of the film is that I feel like we're left with a very general impression of Elvis, but maybe not much of a personal or a detailed or lasting impression of him. Because every single moment in this movie is about hitting like a pivotal moment in his life. And I feel like we're missing out on, say, what Elvis would have been like, you know, having a meal with his wife. What kind of person was he when he was playing with his daughter? Who was he as a friend? We only really know Elvis, the musical talent, the performer, and even the conversations that characters are having in this movie feel a little flat because the characters have to make very general statements as a way, again, to just address the bullet points of what was going on in his life. I also question why the movie had to be told from the point of view of the Colonel, aka Elvis's manager. Like, why? Like, how did this enhance the story? I think it just kind of gave the movie a way to tell the trajectory of his career, but the lens that they're telling it from also feels sort of cold and distant. Like, the Tom Hanks character is very interested in Elvis like as a cash cow. I couldn't tell like how personal and genuine their relationship was. Like, is the Colonel preying on him for his talent, or does the Colonel feel like he really has a connection with him? The movie seems to want it both ways, and it ends up kind of just feeling confused. Underneath the accent and makeup, I actually did kind of like Tom Hanks here. I almost feel like it's gotta be impossible for me not to like him in something. Even though I feel like this performance is gonna be the Jared Leto of House of Gucci kind of thing, in terms of people are just gonna like shit on it. It mostly worked for me though, but it's not one of my favorite Tom Hanks performances. Austin Butler is the best part of this movie though. I really don't think there could have been a better casting choice. He didn't feel like he was just doing some lame impersonation of Elvis. He just feels so effortless in this role. I really felt like I got a sense of Elvis's personality and the high that he gets from performing. I especially feel like he nailed the voice and the dance moves, and that felt really important for him to get right. I feel like maybe if you ditched telling it from the Colonel's perspective and just focused right on Elvis, we could have seen even more from Austin Butler's performance, maybe a deeper, more intimate version of Elvis that we couldn't just get from like watching a PBS documentary on him. Baz Luhrmann is able to throw enough candy at us that the 2-hour, 40-minute runtime feels like just 2 hours. But as I left the theater, I just felt like the whole experience was kind of a blur, which I guess is just what happens when you ride so fast. Generally though, I think this movie does achieve its goal of giving the audience a deeper appreciation for Elvis, even if the experience is fleeting. And I do think that audiences are gonna dig this movie a lot. It actually makes me even slightly worried that if this is like a big mega hit like Bohemian Rhapsody, that this movie could get into Best Picture. Because obviously, you know, Austin Butler is doing a ton and he could get nominated. I don't know if he's gonna be like Taron Egerton in Rocketman or something. I think that's almost equally possible. This is a summer release date after all. You never know how the race is going to feel by the end of the year. I feel like he's going to at least get like a SAG or a Golden Globe nomination. But this movie also feels like it's in the running for costumes, for sure. And maybe sound. If it's a bigger contender, then maybe it can get production design or editing. Maybe makeup, but the Tom Hanks stuff is kind of weird. Even Tom Hanks himself though, like I did wonder, even though I can see a lot of people hating on this performance, maybe he sneaks in a nom or two. Maybe he doesn't get the Oscar at the end of the day, but I do think he could come close, and I'm not ready to like dismiss him because he does have a lot of screen time. So I'm really not ready to call whether or not I think this movie's getting nominated for stuff. Like I could see it getting a whole package of noms or getting shunned in most categories and maybe ending up with like 1 or 2 or no nominations by the end of the year, depending on how well people feel this movie lasts. As for my rating on the movie, I'm going with a 6 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Do people scream when you wiggle?